Guys, good morning. All right. So the next thing what we are going to learn is something called as a conditional statements. See, wherever in a program, if you wanted, for example, based on certain circumstances, like if this would happen, right? If this would happen, let's say we are having few sets of statements, or maybe few sets of program where we have clubbed them in a proper group, or maybe we have formed a block of statements. Now, I wanted that, for example, if this would be true, let's say we are having certain conditions in program. It could be anything. Conditions could be the values inside variable. Conditions could be some other. I mean, we can form the conditions using relational operators as well. And there are different ways that we could mention certain conditions in a program. So whenever in the programming, if there is a situation that you would first of all would have to evaluate this condition, and based on the possibilities, whether the condition is true or false. Like say, if the condition is true, I wanted to execute maybe block number 1. And maybe if the condition is false, then I wanted to go with block number 2. So if in this kind of situations where you have two separate blocks, and based on conditions, like what is the status of the condition, either of them would going to be get executed, then how exactly we can impose, how exactly we can introduce such a kind of, how to handle such a kind of situations in a program. There we are going to make a use of conditional statement. All right, maybe this much of description is not sufficient to explain this, but I'm sure about one thing, like when we will start executing them, when we start using all these into the program, that time you would going to definitely, you are going to understand what exactly is the purpose of having, what exactly is the purpose of having conditional statements in the program. All right, let's see that. So there are three different forms of conditional statements. If include, there are again so many forms of if, like if, nested if, else if, वगैरह वगैरह. And then we have second type is switch statement, and then ternary operators. Now, if and switch, I'm going to complete it right now. Ternary operator we would be using a little bit later in the programmings. That may confuse you a little bit. So as and when you grows in this and you understand most of the programming formats and everything, then there would be certain situation where, I would be using this ternary operators. But right now, let's do one thing. Let's complete if statement, all of the form of if statement, and switch. So there are three different forms of conditional statements. There are three different forms of conditional statements in Apex programming: if, switch, and ternary operators. Let's start with if statement. All right, let's start with if. So there are four different ways we can give an if statement. The first one is a simple if. The first one is a simple if, where there would be only one condition. If, and this is the syntax. So let's see how does the syntax goes with, right? One second. Yes. See how does the syntax looks like to be. If is that keyword. If is a keyword. Now, what is a keyword, by the way? See, every programming language have certain set of reserved words. And this goes with everybody. Like if it's a C programming, C has 32 keywords, C++ have, I don't know like exact the figure. But in every programming language, there are few of few of the words, maybe phrases as well, that is reserved for something and that have a definite purpose. And the meaning of those is already known to compiler. We cannot overwrite that. You cannot provide any new definition to that particular keyword. Compiler would stop you at that moment that this is something which is reserved and you cannot make the changes of the meaning. So in every programming language, there are few sets of words that is reserved and you cannot use it apart from that purpose. If you are using it, it would be whatever has been definition, whatever has been told to the compiler for that. That could be the only form of definition of it. So such a kind of words, or maybe the phrases that is called as keywords. Now, if is that keyword. After if, there is an opening and a closing, a round bracket within where you have to mention the conditions. Now, if that condition is true, all of the statement which has been written inside over here within within this opening and a closing flower bracket, opening and closing curly bracket, this is considered to be block of if. This is considered to be the block of if. So whatever you have written inside this are going to be get executed. But what happens if the condition is false? Then this complete block is going to be get skipped, right? And if something has been written down to this, I mean, after the scope of this, beyond this, those conditions, those statements are going to be get executed. And this certainly would not be executed because if the condition is false. All right, so this is what exactly is the meaning of an if statement. Let's see few of the programs and we're going to understand this. I can do this program, like let me try to show you that what we are going to do would be like, we would particularly going to enter two numbers. And then we are going to perform certain mathematical operation this time, but I'm going to introduce if between them. Let's see how. So for this, I'm going with developer console as usual. Every programming we always do, we do it in the developer console. You have to go with execute anonymous window. This is a temporary window where you can perform the execution of your program. But the only drawback with this is like it cannot save anything, right? So we're going to learn this when we're going to start with object-oriented programming, the actual programming at that time. That time we would be learning like how we can create a class and we can save it. If you wanted to later execute this once again, if you wanted to later refer that, we can definitely come back and see this. Right now, whatever we are writing into execute anonymous window, it's obviously something which can be written and executed, but it cannot be saved. Anyways, so I'm creating a program where I'm defining two integer variables. So let me go with integer. Let's say first number and then second number. And I would also define one more variable called as result. So right now I'm having these three variables, out of which I would be giving the value to the first number. Let's say first number would have a value, could be anything like maybe like 3400. And let me try to define certain odd values. All right. And then I have this second number equals to, let's say, 17. Now, see, I would be going to perform few of the mathematical operation. This we already did, but that time I've shown you one thing, like, inside in the system.debug directly. Inside in the system.debug directly, I have shown you with the previous example that, for example, if you wanted to perform the addition, right? Addition equals to maybe something like that. You could also do the things like over here as well. This we already had covered, if you remember, right? If you have remember. So I have told you the way that you could perform even the arithmetic operations over here as well, right? So this we already have covered. In the previous example, we did it like this. But right now, I'm going with one another approach that we already have one variable called as result. What I'm going to do would be like, what I'm going to do would be like, I'm going to perform this operations, whatever, and I'll be storing the result inside the variable. So here what I have attempted the addition of these two numbers. All right. So I would be writing a statement like the result of addition equals to, and I wanted to print the value of result. So that is why I'm going with this. So this is my first mathematical operation where I have attempted to perform the addition. Now let me go with the second mathematical operation. Let's say we wanted to perform the subtraction. All right. Let me copy the statement, the whole statement. And I'm just trying to change the symbol. That's it. And it would going to give me the result of subtraction. All right. Similarly, I would be performing, let's say, multiplication. So I'm replacing this plus with asterisk symbol. This is going to give me the result of multiplication. Now see, in the division, we have two things. I mean, I wanted to perform the division as well. But there is a possibility, and everyone knows this. Like whenever we do the division, it's always numerator upon denominator. Tell me what happens if the value of denominator goes 0. If you attempt to divide something with zeros, yes, what happens? You can quickly answer me in the chat. What happens whenever you try to divide something with zeros? The result goes to infinity, isn't it? Ruchira and Snehal has quickly answered this. But the prize goes to Ruchira because the fastest finger first was Ruchira. Congratulations. So whenever you attempt to divide something with 0, the result always goes to infinity, isn't it? Let's say if somebody would attempt like this, in that case, the program was going to give me the error. Let me try to show you that first of all. Maths error, actually. There would be an error called as math exception. Let me try to show you that. So I would be division, isn't it? Division. So I'm attempting it to perform division, but the denominator value is 0. And let me try to execute this. So this is going to give me an error called as math exception. Divide by 0. Divide by 0 is a math exception. So in this case, my program is not able to handle this exception. My program is not able to handle this exception. So what I'm going to do would be like, there's one more fault over here. This was the only execution, this was the only execution where there is an ambiguity. Otherwise, the rest all other like addition, subtraction, and multiplication, they were all good. There were no programmatical error into this. No syntactical mistake was there. But they were also not being executed. Why? Because understand one thing. Whenever a program executes, it's always maintain something called as transaction. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean by maintaining the transaction? So it actually means, understand, compiler would consider this whole statements into one block. And whatever it would going to give you the result, the outcome would be the outcome of this whole entity. There is another way to do that, but that is only in the execute anonymous window. See, I can do it like this as well. I can select this much and I would skip this. And there is, instead of execute, there's a button called as execute highlighted. See, so what happens in this case is like, only whatever you have selected, only that much portion of the program is executed and you got the result. But But that is what not we want. I wanted, like, my program should automatically be able to handle this. So just because of this particular operation, the whole transaction is getting failed. The complete block of statement is not getting, it's reverted back. So let me now show you like how we can handle this. So what I'm going to do would be like, before performing this division operation, I'm going to simply check for the value of denominator. I would be checking the value of denominator. Let me show you that. So if the second number, if it is greater than zero, then only I would going to perform this division operation. Otherwise not. I'm pasting the statement over here. Now, what does this implies to you? So before performing this division operation, we are attempting to check for the value of the second number, which actually is denominator in this case. So if the value of second number is greater than zero, then we perform this division, otherwise not. Otherwise not means what? Whatever is written below over here is going to be get executed. So I'm not concluding anything over here. I'm not going for anything. So that's why I've concluded. Now let's see what happens. So what is going to be happen in this case would be like when I go to make an execution of this program, it would first of all would perform the addition, then print you the result, and then subtraction, print you the result, multiplication, print you the result. Particularly in the case of division, it would first of all would check for the value of the second number. And if it is greater than zero, which is not in this case, it wouldn't perform this. All right, let me show you both positive and negative testing. So I go with this execution. Let me go with debug only. So now, as you can see, apart from division, rest everything has been performed and your program has not been stopped, right? All right, let me now perform something like 17 and let me give this execute. So we have now the fresh value of debug file, and you can now see that the result of division is actually 200. All right. So basically, this is, and there would be few more circumstances. Let me try to see few more examples. All right, we have for if else, right? Let me try to show you a few more examples. So with the same program, let me introduce math.mod also. Result. This has just given me the numerator, right? What about the denominators? So 200 is just numerator value. What about the denominator? So if you wanted to get the denominator as well, right? So we particularly, we have one function of maths class. Math is a class, math dot mod. There are so many functions inside this class. There is this one standard class called as math. Inside math, there are so many functions. There's one function called as mod, right? Mod. And I'm using, because I have integer variables, I'm using integers. If you have long variables, then you can use the second version of this. But I'm going with the first one only. So math.mod. Let me show you like the first number, the x value of x is first number, and the value of y, which actually is denominator, is second number. These are the variables. And similarly, I'm going with the result of division, rather the quotient of division. And let me copy this statement, show you the remainder. The remainder of the division is this one. Now let me once again perform this. I'm going to show you the quotient and divisions, remainders as well. So this is the fresh value of response what we have received. Now you can see the quotient is this and remainder is 0. Second number is greater than, oh, I'm dividing first number by first number. That is why it's happening like this. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . That's why. All right, so let's now see. This is quotient and this is reminder. All right. Now see, this was first thing where we have only introduced one if condition. So if this condition is true, if this condition is true, then and then only these two operations, I mean the block of statements, whatever, or maybe block of if, what to say, this is considered to be a block of if. All right. So this is going to be get executed only and when this condition is true. If the condition is false, there might be two possibilities. If the condition is false, let's say if the value of denominator is 0, So what would going to happen in this case? First of all, it will make an evaluation. The compiler would compare whether the second number is greater than 0 because it is 0. This condition false. Second number is not greater than 0, right? It's obviously 0. So this condition fails. When the condition is failed, these block of statements are going to get skipped. They are not come in the execution part. Then what is going to be happen? Control immediately goes over here at this moment where the cursor is blinking right now. Now see, now at this moment of program, at this particular point, I could have two possibilities. Either I wanted to go with some other execution, or I wanted to be print some messages, right? See, if I would execute this program, right? If I would execute this program, it would going to give me the result of, let's say, addition and subtraction and multiplication. But what about division? I don't have any messages. I don't. And let's say, understand, maybe you don't have access to the programming. You have access only to see the output. This happens. We can restrict. In so many cases, we just restrict. We can restrict the outcomes. We can restrict this at the profile levels. So by any chance, let's try to understand. Let's take this as an example. Don't go into depth of this. Just try to understand on the shallow level. By any means, if you are that user who would give some numbers in the input, maybe, and you just have an access to the to see the output. Now you are a little bit surprised about one thing. What happened to the division? Why I am not going to see the result of division? I can see the result of addition, subtraction, multiplication, but I don't see the result of division. What happens to that? So sometimes it might create certain sort of, what to say, certain sort of ambiguity, and people would simply get confused just by looking into the result. So there might be certain circumstances where you wanted to even remove this ambiguity, remove even this type of deficiency. So what I'm going to do would be like, after if, I'm now introducing else. That is the second form of if. The first is plain if, single if. Second is if else. That means along with if, there is an else. If there is only one statement, you can write it like this, system.debug. You can write it like this, system.debug, and I'm just giving the message. Since the value of denominator goes 0, this division operation is terminated, right? Something like this. So if there is only one statement, you wanted to print in else, you can give it directly like this, and it's going to get executed. Let's see. Right now, here we clearly have one message that because the value of denominator was 0, that is the reason, this operation has been terminated, वगैरह, जो भी आप चाहो. But if there are multiple statements after else, right, how to do that? Again, you'll have to introduce a block. And all of those statements would going to be reside over here, just like your if. So it all depends like how many statements you wanted to write. If there is only one statement, you can write it just below to else without opening and closing curly bracket. But if there are multiple statements, you'll always have to get enclosed within this scope of else, within this block of else. So this is what like it looks like to be if and else. This is what it like to be if and else. Understood? Now let me go with any another program you might have. See, this is one of the program. Let me just try to explain because you have to attempt this. So we have a program where you would, what you are going to do, you would be entering the marks of, let's say, 5 subjects. You can assume any subjects. Let's say there are these 5 subjects. And you first of all would define certain variables, actually 5 different variables for that. And then in that variable, in those variables, sorry, they would be you're going to enter the marks and all that. Now, what is this a condition? See, the student is considered to be the pass if he got at least 40 or more than 40 in all subjects. And even if in one subject he got less than 40 marks, is going to be considered to be fail. So what I'm going to do would be like, we would define certain variables of the subject representing certain subjects. We would enter the values to them. And then we would going to write an if statement. You're going to write an if statement where you are going to have all this comparison. Now here particularly, let me take this program. So I would be defining, few of the variables, let's say Hindi, let's say English, let's say maths, and let's say science. How many subjects? 4. And let's say like social studies, like socials. So I have these 5 variables. Let me try to enter the values for them. So let's say in Hindi, the student has scored 45. And then in English, maybe he has scored, let's say 67. Then in maths, he has scored, let's say 78. And then in science, he has scored 89. And then in socials, he has scored, let's say 67, right? So these are some of the values I have entered. Now see, a student is considered to be pass if he has scored at least 40 and more than 40 maybe in every subject. So this is how I'm going to check for this. So I'm going to introduce one statement called if over here. And with this if statement only, I'm going to make this comparison. So I'm going to check for like, if in Hindi, he has scored the marks, whatever is at least greater or equals to, understand, or equals to 40. So in Hindi, he must have a marks which either is greater than or at least equals to what? To 40. And this just not with the English, it should happen with every subject. So there must be, you have to make a use of relational and one second, what is the name of that? Comparison operator, if I'm not wrong. We have learned this relational operators now and logical operators, I'm sorry. So I have to introduce and condition. So how to introduce? You have to and symbol. You wanted to introduce, or there's 2 pipe symbol, not exclamation, right? So these are the symbols. These are the keyboard symbols, and they represents what? And or X, not whatever. All right. So here I wanted set. It's not just about getting passed in Hindi. You'll have to score at least 40 or at least greater than 40 in every subject. So I'll have to check for this for every subject, right? So I'm going to introduce one and condition over here. This and. So I would write down like, he must score. This condition, in every subject, he must at least have equals to or greater than 40, right? So this goes with like maths as well. In the maths also, he should have greater than or at least equals to like 40. And then, and in the science as well, he must have greater than or at least equals to what? 40. And finally, like say socials, he must have greater than or at least equals to 40. So if all these conditions would be true, if all these conditions would be true, then let me open a block. I would first of all would print that system.debug, like, congratulations, you are passed, right? You are passed, something like that. And I would also display the total marks. So system.debug, the total marks, For that, I must have a total variable. I'm going to define that equals to plus total. So let me have one variable over here called as total. I should have to define this over here as well, total. And let's say one more variable called as average. All right. So total would be something like this equals to Hindi plus English plus maths plus science plus socials, right? This is what is total. And average, so AVE, average equals to this total divide by 5 because there are 5 subjects. So this is what is the total. And then system.debug, the average max equals to plus average, right? But this is all about when the student is passed. What about if it's failed, right? If it's failed. So that all I'm introducing is else, inside else, system.debug. Sorry, you failed. It failed. And here also, let's say I wanted to print all these marks. What is your total and everything? So this is this is where I can show you the use of else. And let me execute this program. Social, somewhere around I have made this mistake. Maybe where the spellings are mistakes. That's why. Now, CIAL, social. All right, let me now try with this. Socials, where I have committed the mistake. It should be, see, the name should be same everywhere you have used it. Where else I have used it? Over here. This is why. If you commit any changes, it's obviously going to give it the error. All right. So now because this candidate, we have supplied all of the marks, which is above 40. This is what you can see as a result. You are passed, and this is the total and average. Let me try with something like this. So we should also have to perform the testing of second block, where the statements are written inside the else. So here you can see you are failed and everything, whatever written inside the else block, they are getting displayed, right? So this is what is an purpose of if and else. All right. So go with this by today. Tomorrow I would be covering this third form, which is actually is else if and nested if, and maybe few more if the time permit. I'm going to take with switch. Otherwise, switch would be taken in the next. So you have so many assignments. Let me see. No, this is for the else if. So I would going to be start from this. Write a program to find out the biggest number of 2 given. All right, so this is one of the program. So whatever has been written, just go with all of them. All right, just go with all of them. Go and see how much programs are there and just try to solve every one of them. So by tomorrow morning, I'm going to start with else if. That's all for today, guys. Let me give you this command if you wanted to ask anything. Yes, any questions so far? Any questions? Any questions? Fine. Nothing to ask. Thank you so much.